Hello everybody, welcome to Sure Shot Archery. Anthony here, and in this video I'm going to be testing out the MK Zest limbs, and I'm going to be using my MK Veracity limbs as the baseline for testing these limbs and as the comparison to see what the true performance of the Zest limbs are. Now, to be perfectly clear, I was not paid at all by MK Archery. I do this for well, the good of the archery community, for keeping clarity and honesty in archery, and to validate or disprove what companies say about their product. So if you would like to have more of these videos in the future, please consider checking out, well, just watching more of my videos, or checking out some of the products I offer at sureshotarchery.org. It really truly does help fund this endeavor of keeping accuracy and honesty in archery. As our sport continues to grow, we keep getting bigger and bigger corporations that are, well, self-interested in how things are displayed, and me as an independent creator, well, I want to keep it independent to a degree, and it's going to help keep all those big companies honest, because I'm just a little guy. So with that, in this video, I'm going to be testing the limbs, the Zest limbs. I'm going to be testing them against the Veracity to get a feel and an idea and get some hard numbers on how they perform. This data will be used in a later video for my final review on these limbs. But this testing video is going to show you a lot of things. It's going to show you how fast these limbs are. We're going to measure the FPS, the feet per second. We're going to compare that to the feet per second of the Veracity limbs. We're also going to check out MK Archery's claims that the same poundage Zest limbs and the same poundage Veracity limbs, shot at the same target at the same distance with the same arrows and everything else, they claim that the Zest limbs will perform about 30 centimeters better in height. So if you shot at the target at 70 with Veracity limbs and you hit the middle, if you put Zest limbs in and shot again, you would be, on average, or as they claim, you would be 30 centimeters higher. We're going to find out if that's true, or at least I'm going to give my best shot at it, and you guys can make the decision on, is this a valid testing method or not. So a lot of good stuff is in this video, and with that, let's get started. Yeah, we can stop it, and then I have to do the ending. So before we can start actually testing out the feet per second of the Veracity limbs compared to the new Zest limbs, we need to get a fairly accurate reading on how much these bows weigh. What is the drawback to the given arrow length? So I have my arrow length tester here, and we're going to give 3 pulls per bow, and we're going to take the average of that, and that is what you're going to see on the screen down below when we actually test the bows through the shooting machine and the chronograph to get an average feet per second out of the limbs. I'll also include information like how long the arrow is and things like that for people to get an idea on your own setup and just like how I am getting these numbers, so you can test them and compare them to your own numbers at home, because the more information we have about archery products out there, the better it is for all of us as consumers of archery gear, So, let's get started with these limbs. One, 46.29 pounds. Number 2, 47.2 pounds. And number 3, 46.8 pounds. And now we will take the average of those, and we will put that down in the screen on the next screen when we actually go and test this, so you can see how the poundage of this bow compares to the other one, which should be close. It should be very close to the Zest. I've set them up that way in order to make sure that this test is as accurate as possible, as scientific as possible, at least as scientific as I can make it. So now let's test the weight out on the Zest limbs on an MK Z riser. Okay, so now let's test out the Zest limbs on the MKZ riser. The one before was the Veracity limbs on the MKX10. This one should come in very close to the same weight as the MKX10. Of course, we're going to do 3 pulls on this to get an average and see how close they are. Of course, ideally, perfect would be fantastic, but I'm just looking for, reasonably close, within, maybe 1/4 pound. All right, the first one, 47.4 pounds. 47.3 pounds. And 46.7 pounds. All right, so there you have it. We're gonna add those numbers up, divide them by 3 because we have 3, and that average will go into our comparison box when we compare these limbs back to back. Now that we have their weights and their average of their weights, we can now go and shoot arrows through them and through the chronograph and see what these limbs feet per second is at this given weight, and see how they compare. See if the Zest is a big improvement over the Veracity limbs. Alright, so what does this mean? Well, that gives us an average of 46.76 pounds for the Veracity limbs, and it gives us an average of 47.13 pounds for the Zest limbs, which is a difference between the two of 0.37 pounds. I personally think it's pretty minimum. Some of that could just be in the tolerance difference of just the readings from the puller itself. So I think that's pretty reasonable. Of course, I'm sharing it with you guys so that you can make your own decision on this. Alright, for our test bow, the MKX10 riser is being used. It's a 25-inch riser. The limbs, of course, are the Veracity limbs in long. We're using a Fast Flight Plus string, and we're going to be shooting Easton X10 410 arrow shafts that measure 30 3/8 inches long from throat of the nock to the end of the carbon. There is a tungsten point, 120 grain, and we are using pins and Easton pin nocks. The bow we're using to test the Zest limbs is the MKZ 25-inch riser with long Zest limbs. Again, we're using the same Fast Fight Plus string, and we're using the same 410 Easton arrows, the exact same arrows that we're shooting through the Veracity bow. We are shooting those exact same arrows through the Zest. So there's not even a change of arrows going between these two risers. Essentially, the only thing that is changing is the limbs and the riser itself, even though all the settings are the same, including like the plunger tension and things like that. I don't think the risers being different is a major contributing factor, only because we're just using the MKX10 with the Veracity limbs as our base, and just as our common bow. It could be any bow. I could have put my GMX in there with some other set of limbs, and done it that way. But since I was trying to kind of compare the Zest to the Veracity limbs to the Zest, I wanted to continue that with this first test into the second test, And into the second test, we just use the same riser. We don't even use the MKX10. Following this, there's just a little montage of the testing that I was doing. And right after that, we're going to talk about the actual numbers that we got, the actual feet per second from each limb. Alright, so after showing you some clips of us testing, here are the official numbers. For the MK Veracity limbs, we got 198, 196, 197, pretty consistent. That gives us an average of 197 feet per second for those limbs. Now for the Zest, we got 199, 200, and then a duplicate at 200, giving us an average of 199.6 feet per second. Pretty sweet. In my mind, it's a pretty clear difference, and just from shooting, physically shooting the limbs themselves, you can feel or you can notice a speed difference out of them. So it was nice to see that, the chronograph kind of, proved to me that, I was noticing a difference, and it wasn't just a, oh, this is just my perception of it. There is some level of speed improvement between the old Veracity limbs and the new Zest limbs. Is it enough to make a huge difference downrange or a big sight setting change? We will have to see when I actually shoot these limbs at 70 meters. And we'll get into that in the next test. Alright everybody, time for test number 2. And this is to test, MK Archery's claims on the performance of the Zest limbs. So in their diagram, they showed a set of 44-pound Veracities compared to a set of 44-pound Zest. Well, I will be doing the same thing, not necessarily with 44 pounds, but I will be taking this riser with the set of Veracity limbs. I will be shooting it at my target down at 70 meters. I have a camera down there that will be videoing the arrows hitting, as I'm shooting them here, which you will also see. I'm going to shoot 10 arrows and basically take out all the bad ones that aren't in the center, because this is going to be our test bow. This is going to be our standard, because MK is basing their claims of performance gains with the Zest limbs off of the limbs that I'm using here, these Veracity limbs. So what should happen, based on what MK is saying, is when I put the Zest limbs in here and shoot it with the same sight setting, same arrows, same everything, nothing's changing, same drawing distance, my clicker's not changing, none of that is changing, I should shoot 30 centimeters higher on the target. And I will do the same test. I will shoot my 10 arrows, and I will probably just pull all the ones that aren't in the middle. Maybe I'll leave the highest, the lowest, and the middle one, just so you guys can get a feel for, the group. And of course, I'm shooting 10 arrows because, well, I am human. I definitely make mistakes. I am not quite at the, Kim Woo-jin or Brady Ellison caliber. I shoot well, but, I am not a machine. So, hopefully you appreciate what I'm doing here. I am trying my best to keep this as accurate, as consistent as possible. Basically, the only thing that's changing for this bow, as you see it now, is the limbs. We're going to shoot it first with the Veracities and then second with the Zest so that we can compare them. The weights will be the same because I'm pulling the same distance, because I'm shooting the same arrows each time that are all the same length, because they're X10s and they are my X10s. Some additional information about the bow. This is a 25-inch MKZ riser. Both the Veracity and the Zest limbs are longs. Arrow-wise, we are shooting an Easton X10 410 spine that is coming in at 30 3/8 inches long. That is from the throat of the nock to the end of the carbon, not counting the tungsten point that is in that end. Plunger tension wise, we're running a medium spring set at 6 and 5. So on the plunger button, 5 is the middle, so it's 1 out from 5 at number 6, and it's on the 5th number of that. If you have a biter plunger, you probably know what I'm talking about. Hopefully I'm explaining it well enough that makes sense. Other than that, I think that's all the more useful information. Limb weight doesn't really matter. These happen to be the same weight, so I don't have to worry about that. I do want to make you aware, during this test, well, before I actually started shooting any arrows, I did move my clicker position, so I then re-weighed and retotaled the weight of both the limbs, and these are the averages I got. The Veracity limbs came in at 48.7 pounds after 3 pulls and taking the average of those 3 numbers, and the Zest limbs came in at 44.99 pounds after 3 pulls and taking the average of all of those, and the difference between them is 0.29 pounds. Again, I think that's pretty, small of a difference between them. I don't think it's going to have much of an effect, and I think it's within reason. Our measurement devices are only so exact, unless I guess we want to get into the thousands of dollars range. I'm sure I can find sensors and things that are going to be so exact that we can have like perfect measurements, but that's not something that's in the budget at this point in time. But I did want to make you aware of that change, so you're not confused or thinking, oh, these are your sight settings at this weight, oh, they don't really match up with what I'm seeing. I want to tell you the weight changed. It went up a little bit. So with that, let's get started and actually see where these first arrows land and see what our group looks like and our arrow placement with some MK Veracity limbs. Okay. Hard to see the group from here. Doesn't look too bad. I definitely feel personally that the beginning shots were probably better. Looks like there's at least a few in the gold. Maybe not a complete disaster. We'll go down there, check it out, pull the ones that don't apply, and then I will go and put the Zest limbs into this same setup, and we will shoot them and see what happens. The sight setting for this is, and it's probably tiny, but we're at 8.4 on the Shibuya sight. So 8.4, and we will see if that changes. Well, we're not actually going to change it, but there should be an increase. I should have to move this sight up in order to get my arrows with the Zest limbs into the center of the target, but we will see. All right, we made it down here. It's a group. So let's remove definitely these outer ones. We're trying to keep the arrows that are, or the arrow that's closest to the center here. Of course, these two are, they're basically the same. Yes, there's an extra arrow here because I'm leaving one arrow in the target from the Veracity limb, so I had to grab another one so that I have 10 to shoot when I go and test the Zest limbs. For this, let's see. Oh, and I also have a tape measure because I want to measure what 30 centimeters looks like. So you guys will actually know before me what happens. So, okay, we're gonna do two things. I think I'm gonna keep this arrow in the target. We're gonna draw a nice line here. And let's see. Put V for Veracity. So well, V1, and then this one will be V2. This one's probably slightly closer, this top one, to the center of the target, but it's hard to tell. So we're going to draw a line as well here. Let's take out this one. So we got two lines here. You guys should be able to see that pretty good. I would hope so. Both of them with the Veracity limbs. Now, if I take my tape measure that has centimeters on it, and we go up, 30 centimeters from there is right about here. Should be where this is the V1 arrow. So this is our low one. And for our high arrow, this one, if we measure 30 centimeters, we get to all right, 30 centimeters is right here. Yeah, you can barely see that. Right here, right at the black and the blue on this target, and that's going to be V2. Now, I'm just going to pull this one. I'll leave this bottom one here. Now I'm going to go back. I am going to go and put on the Zest limbs. And I'm going to shoot some more shots, 10 more shots down here. I'm not going to touch the sight setting or anything on the bow. So, in MK's visual that they shared with the public, they're indicating their arrows should be basically here. I think in reality, you know, since I haven't done this yet, I'm thinking we're probably going to be closer to here. This lower mark might be the top, but we will see. We will see how well these limbs perform. You know, we did see the chronograph numbers. The limbs are slightly faster than, the Zest limbs are slightly faster than the Veracities. So we'll see how it goes. This is going to be interesting. So let's find out. All right, so we have the MKZ set up with the Zest limbs here. So everything is exactly the same besides the limbs. We'll be shooting 10 arrows again. And I haven't even changed the sight setting. So I'm going to be aiming at the center of the target, just like I did with the Veracity limbs. But if there is a performance improvement in these, we will see it because my sight setting should have to go up in order for the arrows to move into the center of the target. Also, I took an average of the weight of these limbs as well, both of them at the exact same draw length. So let's begin. All right, that looked higher, but we'll see. We got 9 more arrows to go. Could have just been a poor shot on my part, and that's why we're shooting some extra, because I'm trying to take out as much of the human error element as possible. I don't know. That one looks pretty high too, but we'll see. We'll see. Just gonna keep chugging along. All right, so there's our 10 arrows out of the MKZ with the Zest limbs, with the exact same sight setting as, well, the previous bow that had everything else on it. Well, it was actually the same bow besides the fact that it had Veracity limbs. They look higher. We will find out as I walk down. And then after that, we will check out all of our data and compare these two limbs. All right, this is interesting. Well, I'm gonna do exactly like I said. I'm gonna take anything. I'm gonna keep the high one, and I'm gonna keep the low one. Of course, you can be the judge of this. My take is some of these, especially these two, I personally feel like my bow arm was not the best, and maybe it wasn't the best shot, which could affect the arrow flight. But most of these up here, and I'll have to look at the video, but from how they felt and how they looked like they landed, it seems like a lot of my earlier shots, when I was, a little bit fresher, because you do get worn out after 10 arrows in a row like that, these seem to be much higher. So this is probably, this grouping here is probably a more accurate telling of the performance of these limbs. But, let's go about it. So we'll leave this one. And then... Okay. These are kind of tough because middle's probably like here. But, this is definitely our highest, which is sitting at, if you look at the V2 mark here, 30 inches from that highest arrow that was in the center of the target with the Veracity limbs. This V2 mark, 30 centimeters is right here, which is right in line with this arrow. So, it's definitely reasonable what MK said, and I'm impressed. Yes, could it be the higher end of their group? Maybe. Then again, this kind of requires other archers to shoot this, or if I were to maybe set up my shooting machine and have it shoot from 70, which is kind of scary because I can't afford to lose that many X10s if it doesn't hit the target. But other than that, this is very average, this one, and I really think that this is a mistake on my part. Same with the other one that was here. This is the original arrow that was from the Veracity limbs. I think these are much more average of an arrow for me, this group here, and it's still very close to that 30 centimeter mark, because 30 centimeters from this arrow is right here, so they're still very close. So I don't know. I think MK was being very honest with their testing. So there you have it. And I will even make this a little more visually appealing because I know it's on a bit of a beat up face here. Here's our tape measure. Here is 30 centimeters. 30 centimeters from this first arrow. Matches up with this line here, which is about where this arrow from the Z-bow is, and 30 centimeters from our highest Veracity arrow in the center of the target is just about 30 centimeters from this one. So overall, this makes a lot of sense to me, and I appreciate their honesty, because they could have made this a lot more less scientific and could have just said, oh, it's a 40% improvement off of what? So at least they gave us some numbers to work with, and I can appreciate that. I think more companies need to go in that manner. So when they're saying 50% increase, 10% increase, yada, 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 there is actually some information that I and other people, including you at home, can test and find out, you know, what is the truth and what is just marketing. All right, so that wraps up this video. I put a lot of time and effort into this, trying to make it as accurate as possible. I do understand it did take me a little while to make this happen. That's because I am in the process of really developing a systematic way of testing limbs and things like that. So future videos on other limbs or just other archery products in general, they should go faster. I should be able to get testing videos and reviews out faster because I have, you know, all this experience and all this information that I can go on to get them done, because I am building a way to do this more efficiently. With that though, if you guys have any critiques or other things that you want me to test out in the future, let me know. Do keep in mind I am still working on the smoothness machine. It's a work in progress, but I want to do it right, and I'm not going to make videos using it until it is right. So with that, there will be at some points in the future a video about the smoothness of the Zest limbs and comparing them to other limbs and even other brands of limbs. But at this moment in time, you can look forward to just the review on the limbs from my experience shooting them, how they held up, and things like that in the final review. And of course, I'll be taking all the information you just saw here in this testing video and applying that to my review and what I've learned about these limbs. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give me a like, share it, that would be excellent. And I really can't do this without you guys, so I really appreciate it. So, as always, happy shooting!